All right. Well, good morning. This is Patrick Baker, and I'm your host of Senior Tech Coffee. My company is Prime of Life Tech, and I want to welcome you here to Senior Tech Coffee, and we're going to get started here in just a second. Let me just get my screen share going, and we'll be off and running. Okay. All righty. Well, I'm here to talk to you today about technology guardrails for persons with memory or cognitive issues. And so first off, let me just get to the right screen. Thank you. All right, just a little bit about myself. My name is Patrick Baker, as I mentioned before. My company is Prime of Life Tech, and I provide IT tech support, training, and other IT services for the older adult community, small businesses, and senior care providers. I can help you both on-site and remotely. I provide simplified technology solutions. If you are done using regular computers and you want something simpler to work with for your video chat or using the internet, checking email, looking at your finances, that type of thing, you can learn more about my services at primeoflifetech.com. Anyhow, so as I mentioned before, we're here to talk about technology guardrails for persons with memory or cognitive issues. And if you're just joining us, again, this is Senior Tech Coffee, and I'm your host, Patrick Baker. So let's go ahead and get started. So when you have older adults who have memory or cognitive issues, first of all, the MCI acronym actually stands for mild cognitive impairment. Now, what is that exactly? That could be, dementia. It could be just memory issues. It could be someone who has had a traumatic brain injury. Basically anything that affects someone's cognition and memory. Oftentimes, people are technologically inclined, and folks who do have that propensity, they might start running into some issues when their memory or cognitive issues start presenting themselves. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. That could look like things like forgetting passwords or forgetting simple routine things that they've always done before, like say checking email or signing in to certain brokerage or bank accounts. What we want to do, though, when we're dealing with persons who are suffering from MCI, is we want to make sure to maintain their sense of personal agency and autonomy. So on the one hand, we want to make sure that they stay safe online. On the other hand, we don't want to be infantilizing people or making them feel less than just because they're having some memory or cognitive issues. So we definitely want to provide the means for folks to use their technology safely and responsibly. And so it's really finding that balance between providing them with the agency, but also putting in place some of these guardrails. And so part of that is going to be having some difficult conversations with your loved one. It's akin to taking away the car keys. That type of thing. So, you might want to reach out to social workers, people who specialize in working with older adults, and I know many resources for that if you want to get in touch with me. So let's talk a little bit about what it means to establish guardrails in the technology domain for older adults, and let's just see where we end up with that conversation. So, and again, if you're just joining, I'm Patrick Baker with Prime of Life Tech, and this is Senior Tech Coffee. we're talking about technology guardrails for people with memory or cognitive issues. So as far as older adults and technology is concerned, older adults have steadily increased their technology usage really since 2010, according to the Pew Research Center. 75% of them have used the internet in 2021, and 61% own a smartphone. So that's a big, more than, that's the majority. Older adults, however, are more vulnerable to scams and online fraud. Why is that? Well, for one thing, things are constantly changing and evolving with online services. So keeping track of those changes is hard enough for people who have younger brains. Now, vigilance is required to protect and maintain your identity online and to avoid identity theft. And older adults, especially those who might have mild cognitive impairment, they may not be aware of the level of vigilance that's required and some of the things that you need to watch out for. They also, unfortunately, have a reduced capacity for recognizing fraudulent behavior online. And oftentimes, older adults just come from a more trusting generation. And so they're not really looking out for scams necessarily. As far as some of the risks are concerned, older adults, they tend to have riskier password habits, like using simple passwords that are easy to guess, using the same passwords repeatedly, or sharing their passwords. In addition, persons with MCI, they may be more susceptible to persuasion, say from email advertising or online website ads or email ads that promote health aids or alleged cures for health concerns that they may be working through. So caregivers and family members, they may need to monitor online purchases so that they can ensure that their loved one is not being subject to scams, they're not overspending, or maybe they just forgot that they bought something and they buy it repeatedly, or maybe they purchase goods or services multiple times. So these are some things to be aware of and to watch for. However, some of the downside risks of implementing technology guardrails is that further cognitive decline can occur due to the decreased personal enrichment and socialization opportunities they have if they can't get online and interact with online communities with friends and family in the same way that they were before they started having mild cognitive impairment manifesting. Also, we need to look at a person-centered approach that emphasizes the older adult's wishes. And again, as I mentioned before, not be infantilizing people or just making them feel like they can no longer care for themselves. So the Association of Computing Machinery, or ACM, they put out a paper basically about this type of thing of establishing technology guardrails for people with mild cognitive impairment. And they talked about some of the ways that is done. And they use some very specific terms, and I'm going to talk about these here as we go. So one method is the hover, where basically you're sitting with your older adult client or loved one, and you're actively monitoring their online activities. So you're watching over their shoulder. Pretty invasive. There's privacy issues there, that type of thing. So that one, probably on the more extreme end of the spectrum of options out there. Selective access is another option, where you limit that person's ability to access certain things online or certain activities. Maybe you make them go through desktop icons to access everything, and you pare down the number of icons that they have, the number of choices they have. You remove programs. You can even go so far as to block access to certain websites, either within the browser or at the router level on your home network. So, but again, we're talking about trying to find a balance between safety and a sense of personal agency. Another method is what's called the interactor, where basically you've taken over monitoring the individual's notifications, whether it's through email notifications, social media notifications, and then you actively inform them in some manner, call them on the phone, walk down the hall and let them know, hey, your grandson just posted some really cool pictures on Facebook. You ought to go check those out. So essentially, taking over that monitoring function as far as one's personal notifications are concerned. Again, this is, I think, a bit on the extreme end, but something to consider. In addition, let me just make sure I didn't skip a slide. Yeah. In addition, there's the checker. So this would be a situation where the older person will, say, compose the email or complete the or create an online shopping list and then go add those things to their shopping cart. And then they'll want someone, say a caregiver or a family member, to just double check that, is my email okay? Am I doing anything crazy with my shopping cart? Those types of things. Automation is another guardrail that we can look at, implementing tools like spam filters, password managers. There's some safe browsing options that we can look at, and as well as online bill pay using the repeat bill pay function, so that basically automating things and making it easier for the person to work with email or their passwords, or just to browse safely. And then finally, there is the option of what are known as parental controls, essentially access control settings for computers and mobile device operating systems that can allow you to specify specific sites you want to block access to, as well as setting certain permissions or on those devices. Like, can they install new software? Can they download things? Can they go in and change their password? Those types of things. So those are some, again, maybe some extreme options, but something to consider if, depending on where we are in the spectrum of memory and cognitive issues. So as far as what are the upsides of using these technology guardrails? Well, obviously, increasing safety and security online. We want to make sure that our older family member, loved one, or client is not getting scammed. They're not, getting their device infected with malware by going to dodgy sites, that type of thing. We also are including our elders in the decision-making process. So again, making them aware of the changes that we want to make to keep them safe, and getting their buy-in. I think that's really important that we do that, for that sense of agency. And then also reducing their risk exposure, to things like scams and frauds, and also reducing the likelihood of mistakes. If I mistype my password so many times, maybe it locks my account out for certain online services. Well, if I'm using a password manager, I don't have to worry about misspelling a password. Those types of things. The downsides, of course, depending on how restrictive we get, are degrees of loss of autonomy and privacy in some cases, losing a sense of agency, but also something that's really important to emphasize is the further cognitive decline due to a lack of social interaction, if we're really cutting people off from doing a lot of things online. So really important that we try to strike a balance between safety and promoting wellness and a sense of agency for our older adults. As far as technology guardrail solutions are concerned on the various platforms, in the Windows world, there is the Microsoft Family product, where essentially you can go in, you can create different users Essentially, you can create user accounts for what they would call it a child account. But in fact, what you're doing is just creating accounts that you, as an administrator on the computer, have some control over in terms of the things that they can and cannot do or access. In the Apple world, on Mac OS, iOS, and iPad OS, there's the Apple Screen Time feature, which not only reports, on a daily, weekly basis, how much time you're spending on things like social media and productivity and things of that nature, but you can also set some of these access permissions. And also, you can set time limits for, you can't get on the internet past 10 o'clock at night, that type of thing. So also same thing with Microsoft Family. And similarly with Android and Chromebook, the Google Family Link product provides a similar function in terms of providing an administrative interface where you can control access and permissions for people that are using devices. And this can be not only for children as designed as intended, but also with older adults, and setting up these technology guardrails that we've been talking about. There are some legal requirements that you should be aware of, though, when you are getting into the domain of establishing technology guardrails. First off, let's talk for a second about digital assets. Now, your digital assets are essentially your possessions in the digital world. That could be an email account, that could be your files, that could be intellectual property that exists in digital form. Essentially, anything that you touch in the online world are your digital assets. Now, managing your digital assets needs to be included as part of your estate planning, just like your physical assets. Now, why is this important? This is important because in order for me as a client, or I'm sorry, as a caregiver, or as a family member of an older adult person with mild cognitive impairment, I cannot legally just go into people's email. I cannot just legally. You cannot just legally share your passwords with me. That's actually not legal. So what this requires is the appropriate powers of attorney, so that family members and caregivers can interact with an older adult's online accounts legally. Super important. And then finally, using a password manager. I cannot emphasize how important it is to use a password manager. So many of my older adult clients who don't necessarily even have any mild cognitive impairment struggle constantly with their passwords. And in addition to that, they run the risk of using simple passwords as opposed to complex passwords. For your information, a complex password is 12 characters long. It consists of at least one uppercase character, one number, and one special character like an ampersand or an exclamation point. If you meet those minimum requirements for a password, that's a complex password that literally takes thousands of years to crack, even with an automated tool. So super important to use a password manager. Anyhow, that's all I had to say today about technology guardrails for folks who may be experiencing mild cognitive impairment, and how caregivers and family members can help their clients and loved ones stay safe online and still maintain a sense of agency. And again, my name is Patrick Baker with Prime of Life Tech. Senior Tech Coffee happens on the first Wednesday of the month, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. And you can learn more details by going to bit.ly/seniortechcoffee, or just go to primeoflifetech.com. And again, this is my contact information. If you would like some help with setting up some technology guardrails for your folks who may be experiencing mild cognitive impairment, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to consult with you and help you find a solution that meets your family members' need, and then also gives you some peace of mind in terms of their safety online. So you can reach me at primeoflifetech.com or email info@primeoflifetech.com or call the number you see on the screen there. Thanks for watching, and thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful day, and thank you.